welcome everybody to our bi-weekly webinar. I'm Ryan Poole. For people that don't know, I'm an agent just like you all. Been doing this for over 20 years. Also the founder of Real Trade, an online marketplace and social media platform. As Jim says, we're the home of the double dip. So actually imagine this, buyers and sellers can contact you off your listing. So I want you to check that out if you haven't yet, and I'll share it in the chat, a link to it. Also, my awesome co-host here, Jim Brown, founder of New Path Title, the amazing closing software, Title Leap, and James Brown Law. We're really excited for this webinar. Been paying close attention to the condo market on what's happening, and we got some great data that we're going to share with you. Jim's going to be sharing some awesome tips here to help you close more condo deals, but we're going to get granular on this one because it's a huge opportunity, in my opinion, as a real estate agent right now. You know, if you're working with buyers, they've been maybe sitting on the fence line going, hey, I'm going to wait until, you know, there's some kind of shakeup in the market. Well, it's happening, and you're going to see it happen in real time. We're going to be giving some good data. And obviously, if you're working on any sellers in the condo market and you're trying to get them to sell and get them, you know, to get off the couch and make some decisions, well, actually, you have some great data now to make those, help them make those decisions too. So really excited about this. So I'm going to turn it over to Jim. Jim, go ahead, do your intro.
Thanks, Ryan. So today is going to be a little bit different than we did the deep dive. We're going to actually look at some milestone reports and come up with ways to explain this stuff to your buyers and sellers to turn it into sales. As agents, it's nice when values go up because our commissions get bigger, but really what we care about as a title agent and as a real estate agent is transaction volume. And how do we make transaction volume happen? Drive buyers and sellers to us. What does that look like today? Probably creating content. And every single one of these reports is a ripe opportunity for content. Ryan, I thought we'd do things a little different today. I'll do a presentation and then you'll do a presentation of what you think the applications are. I'll do a deep dive on how to spin the SIRS reports into content and dialogue with your clients and set expectations. And then you can talk about the market data. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I love this. I'm excited for this one. I've been digging deep on the market data guides with condos, both for Palm Beach, Broward, and Dade County, and it's very, very interesting to say the least.
So, reoccurring business, March 27th, we have our social at Sushi Joe upstairs. Some of you guys turned out last time. No agenda, just a good time to meet and greet. March 27th on the second floor at Sushi Joe. I'm gonna give you some title advance stuff in a minute. Like and subscribe. We love the appreciation. Closing cost calculator is updated. You guys are using it. Works great. Has all the new functions for buyer's agency and all those new features. There's no dumb questions. Put your stuff in the chat. Ryan will get to it. We'll pick it up at the end. If you turn on your camera, I'd love to see your reactions. And text me with any future topics. You can get to me at newpathtitle.com and you can click on 24/7 attorney support and you can text me for anything. All right, jumping right into the topic because there's a lot here. I'm sure Ryan's going to have a lot to explain. Let's see. Is that the one we want to do? No, let's do this one. Share. Bam. All right, Ryan, you should be looking at two screens.
Yeah, I see both of them.
All right, how to dominate the condo market and turn SIRS into a marketing opportunity. Everybody knows what SIRS is, hopefully. We don't have to do the elemental stuff. And so what we're trying to do is figure out how to make sales happen as a result of this new dynamic that we're all forced into. You can always write us in paragraph 20 as a closing agent. That's the main topic for today. You can always write us in paragraph 20 as the closing agent, regardless of who's paying. Today is March 11th, 2025. The condo market is quickly turning into a buyer's landscape. Real estate agents need to understand why buyers are skittish, educate themselves on building financials, and be able to relay this succinctly to their clients. They also need to be able to explain financials to sellers and set expectations accurately at the start. Unfortunately, the algorithms, Zillow and Realtor.com, do not take these factors into their pricing. As a result, real estate agents can be swimming against the current for consumer sentiment. Numbers don't lie. Know the facts. These are incredible marketing opportunities. Full stop. This stuff is an incredible marketing opportunity for you guys. It's frustrating. I spent the last several days trying to put data together to make it explainable for you guys, but show you like a step-by-step way to get it into your client's hands. This is the theme. Data is your superpower.
Yep.
Lever data.
I mean, in this market right now, the educated agent's going to win. It really is.
You have to distinguish yourselves by making your client the superhero and you're the guide, right? So you show up and you drop some data, they become the superhero and you're the guide. You're simply the guide and you're dropping the kernel, you're dropping the breadcrumbs and you're taking them to their journey, their promised land. And they're the person, they're the hero, you're just the guide. But what makes you the guide? It's your knowledge of the data. So here's a couple of interesting data points that you can use. Lever the data, it just makes you look smart. Set yourself apart from the crowd. Did you know that Fannie Mae, show of hands real quick, did anybody know that Fannie Mae has a home purchase sentiment index? Has anybody heard of this?
Wow.
Fannie Mae Home Purchase Sentiment Index gives you data spoon-fed to you that you guys can turn into dialogue with your clients. For example, February 2025 report dropped by 1.8 points to 7.16, making a 1.2 point decline year over year for the first annual decrease since 2023. A rating of 100 is considered super optimistic, and a rating of 50 is pessimistic. How would you how would you explain this to your sellers when you're on your listing appointment with sellers? Now is the time to sell. The trend is moving down. That's an easy one. How do you use this with your buyers? Things are down. Now is the time to buy. No one ever times the bottom perfectly. And if you try to time the bottom, by the time you get there, you're going to be fighting the tide of all the buyers that are jumping in at the same time.
Great advice.
One simple little data point. I had no idea it existed. Now you've got dialogue with your clients that makes you look like a superhero or makes you look like the guide and they can look
And we're
like
going to have great data to we're going to show on the condo sales to go over that too. It's amazing.
This is also great content for social media. Everybody's looking for stuff to talk about, but everybody's talking about fluffy stuff that I hear. Now you can go on social media and you can say, hey, is everybody familiar with the Fannie Mae Home Price Super Sentiment Index? And you can talk about the data and you can Google it or you can AI it. It's easy to get at, but knowing that there are data points out there that you can turn into content is key. All right, so I got a couple of calls before we get into the main content topic. I got a couple of calls in the last few days from agents, and we can all benefit from each other's shortcomings, knowledge, whatever. These are laws that can trip up agents that you may or may not know about. According to the Solid Waste Authority and local ordinance in Palm Beach County, yard waste generated by landscapers and contractors is considered commercial waste and cannot be brought to the curb by the contractor. Who knew? You have to get the contractor to take the waste away themselves to be in compliance with the law. Who knew that? So I had a client that called, they paid their agent a couple of bucks to deal with the yard waste, and the agent had the yard waste brought to the curb. The buyer of the property was then cited after the closing, and it just turned into a giant snowball mess. Understand what the rules are, and you'll never run afoul of the issue. The rule is only homeowners are permitted by law to bring yard waste to the curb for municipal pickup. Does everybody have their landscaper bring their yard waste to the yard? Yes. Just understand what the rules are, however. All right, another new rule that I saw some agents get tripped up on. I got tripped up on it. Florida recently created statute 83-425 that limits lease non-renewal notices and overrides local laws. So there were local laws that said when a monthly or an annual lease renews, there were certain time periods that had to be adhered to before the landlord was able to break the lease, not renew the lease. Like the old rule before COVID was, unless you had a lease that said it was going to renew, there was no duty to give a notice of non-renewal for an annual or a monthly lease. Is everybody with me? After COVID, ordinances, local municipalities and local governments imposed rules, 60 days, 90 days, notice periods where you had to give your tenant notice that you weren't renewing the lease, completely contrary to how the rule was for the last million years. Florida Senate and legislature recently enacted 83-425 that limits non-renewal notices on month-to-month leases. It went from 15 to 30 days, notice required of non-renewal, and annual leases can't be longer than 60 and can't be shorter than 30. So if you're gonna not renew your tenant's lease so that all the laws in the state were uniform, you have to give them those notice provisions. Anybody have any questions? All right, since our last pod and my personal title open permit lien story, we had several people ordering title advances. Many agents have used titleadvance.io and all said the same thing. I can't believe I found issues that I didn't know about. And in all situations, it made their life easier. And it may not be what you want to hear, like that PACE mortgage, that PACE loan is actually a mortgage that the sellers didn't anticipate. Knowing what you're dealing with way upstream versus getting it at the closing table, everybody's better off. Everybody's better off. All right, here's our main case study. Here's our main topic for today. Each building is an opportunity for a separate story and tons of content that distinguish you as the expert. Every single one of these SIRS reports is pregnant with opportunity for you guys to lever yourself as an expert in your field and in your local market. The first thing we're going to look at is a building downtown, 610 Clematis. We're going to look at the SIRS report for 610 Clematis. This is an example of a poorly worded SIRS report, which doesn't mean you're not going to deal with it. It just means you're going to have to dig a little further to figure out what's going on. So can you guys see my structural integrity reserve study,
Yeah,
Ryan?
I can see it, Jim. Looks good.
All right, so this is a poorly written example. You have to break it down so customers can understand it, right? If you drop this on their lap, they're just gonna think, I want to live in a single family. But if you take a little time to break this thing down, people still want to live in condos. I get calls all the time, and you just have to be able to break this stuff down. So what did we talk about last session? We always go to the executive summary. So in this executive summary, it is not presented like the executive summary we looked at last time. It is not well broken down. It is not clearly defined. However, if you look at it, there's a section called the consolidated findings. So here's the consolidated findings, and you have number of components scheduled for replacement in year one, cost of components scheduled for replacement in year one. So this is the cost of all the stuff that has to be replaced in year one. And then you have the stuff that's mandatory and the stuff that's elective. Who knows for bonus points, what's the difference between the mandatory, the law, between the new law and the old law? The old law was everything could be kicked down the road and the expenses and the assessments incurred in the year that the elements that needed to be replaced. Under the new law, budgeting on mandatory elements has to take place year by year and has to be budgeted year by year. That's the big difference. So here you have the allocated to SIRS and then allocated to non-SIRS of 250 grand and 1.2 million for SIRS. And if you break it down and you're explaining it to your client, you're going to tell them that there's $4,780 for special assessments in year one, or it could be 5,557 special assessments in year one. And why is that? Because the unit members can vote to kick the can down the road on the expenses for the non-SIRS expenses. Does everybody understand what I'm talking about?
Yep.
There's two categories of expenses, SIRS and non-SIRS. And the non-SIRS expenses can be voted by the unit owners to not be incurred on a year-by-year basis and instead be incurred on the year that they're due.
Could that be more like cosmetic things?
That would be pool decks and copings and decorative things. And there's in 610 Clematis, there's sculptures and things like that. Exactly. This is not a great way to analyze. However, in the absence of better reporting, this is what you have to do. You have to get creative. You can also scroll down to page 33. Excuse me. Page 33 has a nice picture. You got to do all this stuff ahead of time before you show up with your client, because when you get to in front of your client, you want to put little tabs in front of everything. So here's an important diagram to show your client. The majority of the budget is for roofs. That is a beautiful thing. Why? Roofs are easily replaced. Roofs are not something that's going to require balconies being jackhammered. You got to have all these little narratives and you got to have all these little stories, because this is what's going to distinguish you as the great agent. And if you want to explain it as to what they're not going to be looking at, they're not going to be looking at structure. Look at the structural elements of the budget over the next coming annual periods. It's a tiny sliver, right? What does that mean? You're not going to have the balconies being jackhammered. You're not going to have the exterior concrete being removed and replaced. There's a building over across from Mar-a-Lago. A year ago, the whole building was shrouded in exterior structure, skeleton, to prop the building up while they replaced the concrete. Could you imagine showing that building to a potential buyer? Absolutely not. But this building here, 610 Clematis, you're going to have work being conducted on the roof. No buyer is ever going to see that walking through the building. And when you're talking about the building to your clients, you're going to be telling them, the stuff that has to happen isn't structural. You have fireproofing is the next biggest element. You have non-SIRS components, the pool copings and the pool decks and the sculptures and things like that are another large component. And waterproofing. Those are the biggies. When you're selling this building to your clients, those are all great talking points. Am I making sense?
Oh, it makes total sense, Jim. I mean, you just
You
let the
got
buyers, like, you don't have to freak out here. It's just a roof. You know, it's just a roof replacement here.
Exactly. It's all in the narrative that you conjure up, you create about the building. It's all about the dialogue. And I know I know agents that have historically been great condo agents that call me and say they're getting out. And I ask them why, and they just say, oh, it's too much liability. It's too much to explain. And I just don't agree. I think it requires a deeper narrative, but it's not impossible. And with an hour's worth of time, an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, you can really create a nice narrative to sell or buy condos with your clients under. So here's a really important table. It's page 24, page 33. It shows the 30-year maintenance schedule. So in the first year, they're going to break down all the costs and what's going to be worked on. And if you look at it, it's roofs and minor structural restoration stuff and fireproofing and waterproofing and painting. And then in year 2, they give what's going to be worked on. So the client has an idea, the buyer, potential buyer moving forward, exactly what they're buying into. Why don't people buy condos? Because they're scared. This takes all the fear away. It takes all the fear away, and you know exactly what's going to be happening in your building for the next many years. In year 4, you've got more roofs and waterproofing. You've got some plumbing. In year 5, you've got some fireproofing and some plumbing. None of these are big ticket items in isolation. The fireproofing is, but all these plumbing things, now you can tell your client, and I talked to my wife about it. She says, I would never buy in a condo because I never know what to expect. And I have to tell you that if I'm not looking at this stuff, I feel the same way. But when I look at this stuff, This is more predictable than the water main that blew out at my house last night at 10 o'clock at night. You know exactly what's here's 2035, here's 2036, goes right up till the end of 2043. You know predictably what's going to be going on in this building. And I think that's knowledge and power, and that's your narrative. That's what you're going to lever to talk to your clients about. Here's another one, 630 South Sapadilla. Full service does a great job presenting the data. They make the job easy for you. I made a cheat sheet just because that's what I do. My cheat sheet, oh no, that was the cheat sheet for the other building. I made a cheat sheet for 610, and 610 is a great example of no phase twos, no extensive structural repairs. That was just my little cheat sheet for that I could click on in my Google Docs that would bring up the narrative. In this one, in 630 South Sap, First Services does a great job. They provide an inspection summary. Here's their inspection summary. And this is a one-page document that you can drop in your client's lap. And they say that there's nothing structural going on. This is 630 South Sap now. Nothing structurally going on, so they don't need to do a second phase milestone inspection. They're only going to do a first phase because their visual inspections were sufficient. There are no mandatory repairs and no substantial structural defects. And you can use this to make your client feel good. Unfortunately, I don't have the great tools I had with the other building to break down the budget further, to break down the SIRS further. But what they did provide is a beautiful budget. And I think this is great because now you can show this to your client. And at the very bottom, the first page is the total assessments at the very top. So here's the total assessments. And we talked about mandatory and non-mandatory assessments. Ryan, you got that concerned look at your face like I'm going too deep.
Oh yeah. Well, Joel had a quick question here. I mean, these projected costs, they're adjusted for inflation, / cost of living, right? Yes, they are.
Everything that I can think of except tariffs.
Yeah.
I don't think that they contemplated tariffs, and everybody in the construction world, I have a couple construction projects going on right now. Everybody in the construction world is up in arms over materials tariffs. It does not contemplate that, but it does include cost of living increases, cost of materials, general cost of materials increases, cost of construction increases, labor increases, all the stuff you can expect. So here's a cool table that you could show your client on 630 South Sap if you're doing a project in there, if you're doing a sale in there. Here's maintenances, here's reserves to be collected, and here's the SIRS to be collected. It's all broken down, mandatory, non-mandatory, and then their regular budget. And it totals 2.4 million. And now you can go over here and you can find your unit. This particular unit was a single family, 1-bedroom penthouse. And so you have the actual monthly maintenance was 510. The monthly maintenance per unit is 561.33 with no projected special assessments. How do I get there? I did what every great agent does, and you ask them for an email, and they send you an email and it says no projected special assessments. You use these tools and you create a little pitch for your buyer or your seller when you're setting expectations on the listing price. The Zillow tools and the Realtor.com tools that your buyers and sellers have been going to don't paint the accurate picture you need to be the effective agent. That's why properties are sitting on the market. And that's why Tajay and Christian and Alina and our title team are talking to clients and they're canceling at the last hour in their transactions. And the agents work their butts off. The seller's agent is going to resell the property, but the buyer's agent worked their butt off for that property, and now they got to do it all over again. And there are lots of people that still want to buy condos.
Wendy has a quick question. Does that budget satisfy our requirement when we need to provide the buyers the budget? I know we need latest financials, right? I
Yes.
mean, that's
That is the exact document that came out of that inquiry. And we're going to go over the checklist in a minute because I added a couple of items to it and I took a couple away. Here's the actual milestone inspection report for that building. I don't suggest that agents go into a deep dive on the inspection. So there's two parts, right, to milestones. There's inspections and there's budgeting. I don't suggest you go into a deep dive on the inspections. However, if you take 2 minutes and you look at it, it's actually pretty good. There's an executive summary. It's got the high level information, but no data. No substantial deterioration was observed, thus no phase 2, right? How good is that going to make your client feel? And
yeah.
then on page 6, again, another statement of the structure, 5.6. JD did not observe any items classified as substantial structural deterioration. So again, you can really get into the weeds on the inspection reports. I don't suggest you do that. Get
Yeah.
into the weeds on the budgeting and get in the weeds on the SIRS
Here's
report.
report. Let me ask you a quick question on this because I'm actually working with multiple buyers right now in the courtyards. Is is this per building? Because there's a bunch of buildings in the court.
Yeah, there's 3 buildings,
Yeah.
and that's what I kind of said at the very top. There are 3
Yeah.
buildings. You have to make sure you get the report for your building.
Yeah. Got it.
And so you got to be aware, right? Just like Ryan said, there's 3 buildings. Don't be looking at the wrong report. I hate to admit it, I did. I started looking at the wrong report just because I didn't take a little bit of time to look at the address for this unit. Again, every single one of these reports is so pregnant with content, it's ridiculous. Instead of talking about fluffy stuff, you could be making content that people in New Jersey are reading and thinking about moving to Florida.
Jacqueline has a quick question here. She goes, I'm trying to get an inspection report for my listing in Century Village called First Service. How do I get the results? Do they send it to owners? Good question.
We'll
Open
go
request.
we'll go through that in a minute. We'll go through the
Yep.
checklist, and that'll be one of the topics we'll
Yep.
cover. I hate to say some of this stuff is redundant for you guys, but we've been talking about this for the last few weeks, few sessions, but some of this will be redundant.
Yeah.
So I came up with this pre-listing offer condo checklist. This is when you're having superficial conversations. This isn't when you're listing or actually after you've made an offer. This is just a superficial list. At a minimum, know these before your pre-listing appointment or you make an offer. So you're heading in for a listing appointment. This is the bare minimum stuff I'd want you to know. Investor owner occupied ratio. It's very important to lenders. If you know it, it's going to be a great tool because you're going to know exactly what buildings can be lent on and how. Buddy up to a good lender, Jeff, and is knowledgeable on this stuff, and it's just threshold stuff. I was listening to a report this morning. There are a dozen markets in the country where the proportion of cash buyers is dramatically up since COVID. I thought West Palm Beach, given how many cash buyers we see in our office, would be on the list. West Palm Beach was not on the list. Now, if you're operating downtown, I would suggest anecdotally that downtown is disproportionately cash buyer oriented or near downtown, but in general, loans are still key. Is there insurance? I literally was looking at a file on an agent that's on this pod today that we were having discussions late in the transaction that I wasn't aware of, that the lender uncovered insufficient insurance coverage. This stuff is so vital. Like, it went from a slam dunk closing, it's my file, it's my closing, to I don't know if they're going to be able to close. Knowing this stuff, I cannot stress enough the importance. Do they have current financials? I forget who had asked the question, but that's an important one because that's something that they're going to need in the contract. Are there Milestone and SIRS reports? And then renting after purchase. This comes up over and over. Can I rent the property? I just had a showing this week, and the first thing they want to know is what are the rental restrictions after when they take title. Here's the ones I just added to the list. How many units are in the building and how many units are in default? It's so important. That's just stuff you want to know as a threshold going in. Once you get the property listed, once you're actually making an offer, this is the kind of stuff you're going to serve on the agent or you're going to serve on the association. Does the association have the first right of refusal? These are all things lifted from the condominium disclosure or years of practice or the contract. Does the unit owner have the first right of first refusal? What are the regular assessments? Are there special assessments? Please provide the board agendas and the meeting minutes for the year prior to the sale. That's required in the condominium addendum. Please provide a copy or link to the following documents. And these are the documents that are in your condominium addendum that are required under the condominium addendum. I just broke it down into a simple list. Please provide brief answers on the parking spaces, on the inspections. Are they completed? Are they required? Has the association turned over? This is the new section to the bottom of the condominium addendum. There's 3 new elements, so I've just put them in a summary here. Is the structural integrity reserve study done? So you got the milestone inspections. That's the inspection report, and the structural integrity reserve study. That's the budgeting report. That's the one you want to share with your client. Again, I wouldn't go too deep into the weeds with this one. All the budgeting is tied to physical elements of the property, so there's no need to distract your client with the inspections. It's all summarized in the budget. Is that clear, you guys?
Yep.
All right. Are there other associations? That's also a new element in the new condominium rider. Are there violations of the condominium association rules or regulations? If yes, please briefly describe. You won't know this until you get your estoppel letter, which could be late in the transaction. So ask this early on. If is the association involved in any current or pending litigation? That's in the addendum. Has the association voted to forego retrofitting its fire sprinkler system, handrails, or guardrails? This is in the condominium addendum. I never knew it existed until it came up and bit one of my clients in the butt the other day. Know it right off the bat. All right. Are there rental restrictions? And then my new additions, what we talked about in the preliminary list, you want to make sure you know this stuff in the final list. How many units are there? How many units are in default? And can you please provide a schedule of what a unit owner can expect to pay in assessments for the next few years? They will not likely volunteer this one or this one. I would absolutely ask and get your client involved, your seller involved if they won't give that answer. That's hugely important. So many buyers and sellers, so many buyers now are asking me, I don't know where they got this idea. So many buyers are asking me, how many units are in default? What's going to happen if I'm the only person paying assessments in this building?
Hey, Jim,
Yeah.
if you can't get that answer, a good key is to see if there is a increase in the HOA fees or a recent assessment. That'll give you an idea. Is there going to be delinquencies or ongoing delinquencies, going forward? I just ran into that situation in a place up in Stewart. So,
And thankfully, there are most of our Palm Beach County proper condominiums that I've seen have low default rates. Very, 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 very low. Now, if you go down to Miami, if you go to where Surfside collapsed, that whole section of road up to where Surfside collapsed, the default rates are through the roof. But for some reason, I'm finding buyers and it's becoming more sophisticated on this topic, and they're asking me about default rates. And listen, if you're listing a property and you don't want to know this data, you might get bit in the butt by it later. But if you know the data up front, knowledge is power. You can set expectations with your sellers properly, and you're going to waste a lot less time. Nobody wants to know this stuff, but everybody wants to know this stuff. Do you know what I mean?
100%.
It's like the cheating spouse. You don't want to know, but you want to know. You gotta know.
Yep.
I see a couple of you laughing. I won't reveal any. All right, so this answers the question that was posed earlier. I forget which agent posed it, but the governance form
Jacqueline. Yep.
is a document provided by ordinance. I gave you provided by statute. I gave you a link to it. There's a time period in there. Sellers can ask for data and they have to receive it within that time period. That's what I have. I'm sorry to leave you guys like this Tasmanian devil whirlwind of knowledge, but I want to just summarize and break it down before Ryan takes over. You have the SIRS budgeting report and the milestone inspection report. Focus on the SIRS, focus on the checklist, create a narrative to make your buyers and sellers comfortable with what the future looks like. This is actually more predictable than buying a single family home. Now, I showed you 2 reports of favorable properties. I could show you several reports of not favorable properties, but all it's going to show you is special assessments. We went over the consulate last session and had a special assessment. The special assessment was very small, but I can assure you there are properties in that little corridor right opposite Mar-a-Lago where the special assessments are gargantuan and they're under pressure from developers and things like that. And several of the buildings are actually units are being purchased by developers and are going to take over majority shares. And those narratives are very different. But when you start reading the SIRS report on budgeting, it just spells it all out. You can't make a mistake. If you take the time to understand the building, you will not make a mistake.
Love it, Jim.
All right,
Incredible. I mean, this information that Jim has presented now is going to dovetail very nice to the condo data. So now you're educated, right, of how to read these reports, how to transfer that information either to your seller or to your buyer to either help you win a listing or help you close a deal with a buyer. And I'm actually working, ironically, in deals right now at the courtyards with multiple buyers. So I just need the reports. It's not the same buildings, the ones that we're looking at, but I'll get the new building.
They're really good at providing it. You ask it.
Yeah, no, I know the people there. I've actually sold about 6 units in there, so it's great. You
The
know,
one thing they won't give you though, like everybody wants to know, what am I going to pay over the next couple of years? They won't give you that. So you got to get summary emails and you got to piece together a little narrative.
Yep, it is. And now we're going to work on the narrative on the market and how to use that to your advantage to help you close some deals, because it's very interesting is what's happening. I've got the latest data. I had to really work for it and hunt for it, but it's let's present that. Jim, you want to stop sharing and then I'll share my screen and then we'll spend about 10-15 minutes on this. But this is very powerful stuff that we're going to go over here. I'm using it actively right now with buyers and sellers that I have in condos. So also too, Jim's going to email out that outline with that stuff you can copy and paste. Jim, let's also include too this data report that I'm going to get ready to present to.
We can make a link in my outline and we can have your data report in the outline. If you want to put it right at the top, that'd be great.
Awesome. So you can see my screen, Jim?
Yep.
Okay, awesome. So this is the condo sales report, and I broke this down to county. I don't know, I'm going to start with Palm Beach, and then I got Broward and Dade County as well that we can go, but it's some very interesting data. This is to the day. I actually finished this yesterday, so this is right up to the day. So this is for Palm Beach counties. Now this I pulled to do a 3-month comparison from last year to this year, right? Because I figure, like, let's not just pick 1 month, let's pick a 3-month rolling average compared to last year to this year. So this is for Palm Beach County, and we'll get a little bit more granular on the data below it. But right now, okay, this is something that is a concern. If you're working with buyers, like I said, you can leverage this to say, hey, now's the time to buy. If you're sellers, you're like, hey, selling a condo right now is like surfing a wave. You want to be in front of the wave. You don't want to be behind it or on top of it. You want to stay in front of this. So this can say, hey, this wave's coming. We got to surf this in. If you're trying to get a listing, obviously, if you're a buyer, you're leveraging it. Hey, now's the time to get a deal. So right now, compared to from January 1st, 2024 to March 10th, 2024. So 3 months from 2024 to 2025. This is comparing the 3 months. So right now you can see last year at that time, there's 8,520 active condos. Right now we have 10,239. So a massive jump, right, in the number of active listings. Now new listings in that time frame, okay, stayed about the same, but look at this difference here from under contract from last year to this year. Definitely a chip down, and a big thing to look at here. This right here is the number of sold in that time frame from January to March 10th, from last year to this year. We're definitely seeing a decrease in number of sales. So we're seeing a big uptick in number of active listings, a big downtick on number of sold listings.
And so this stuff is just like bottlenecked. And when you look at the number of listings, it's just because it's bottlenecked, not getting to the closing table.
Yep. Yep. So it's a big change. Like I said, information's power. You're presenting this to your buyer. This is a great time to get a deal. If you're a seller, you're using this. You can put, a little bit of emotional, get a little bit of fear going. Hey, now's the time to sell, because I'm going to show you here on the next things is the trend that's happening here in the future. And it's getting very interested. Now, the sold volume is about the same as last year, but of course that dictates a lot on the price. So that's this data, these last few, a couple skewed. This average sales price too, I wouldn't look at that too much, because there could be more higher end condos. Like, here you have Elon supposedly spending 100 million for one condo downtown, and the percent of list.
That's a really good point, Ryan. When people
Yeah.
look at average price data, you
Yeah.
get a couple of big fat sales, and
Yeah.
it just drags the averages in the direction of the big fat sale. But the reality is the median sale didn't change.
Exactly. So let's get a little bit more granular here.
Median and mean is the one that's a more predictable value, but you just
Yeah.
don't see it.
So this is something that I really want to look at here, and this is something that's very interesting, because this is median days on the market to contract, right? So this means from the time you list it to the time that you actually sell this. Now, this is going from January 2024 to end of February 2025. So this is 13 months, and this is per month from that time. So you can start to see a trend here in the last year. We're going from 45 days on the market to contract to now to 80 days, and the trend's going up. Right. So this is something that you definitely want to show, your sellers, you want to get priced, aggressively here if you want to sell your property quicker. So that's an important number to look at. Now, this one's really important, in my opinion, is the months of inventory. Because traditionally, okay, when they say an even market is somewhere between 10 to 12 months of inventory, and it starts to go to from anything under 10 to 12 is a seller's market, anything above 12 then is a buyer's market. But look at this months of inventory. Now, this is just for condo sales. This is not taking into account single family homes, but look at the trend on the months of inventory, month over month, from January of last year to February of 2025. That's incredible, So this is something that you can definitely use as a trend for your buyers. Now, here's another thing. Look at the number of listings sold. Now, I want you to make sure that you understand this. Number of listings sold month over month from last year to this year. And we're seeing a downward trend. Like last year, we saw an upward trend in January, February, March, and April. We're starting to see a downward trend here. But look at this. We went from like 900, condos sold a month to now we're below 500. And there's actually expecting to even go lower from the data that I'm seeing, Jim. I know. So here we go. Price trends. This number is skewed. This is the sold medium sale price average. It's staying, kind of looks like it's going down again. There's a bunch of high-end condos that can skew that data. This one percent of of list price. That I don't want to take that number too much consideration because obviously people can change their list price and drop their list prices, right, Jim, over time. But we're
Well,
definitely seeing a downward trend on that.
but here's also a really important point to make, and again, I have a lot of conversations about real estate with my wife, and a lot of conversations with real estate about real estate with a lot of different people that aren't necessarily in the business, and so what happens is people say they look at the data and they go, "Oh my God, the listing price is selling for a fraction of list." Yeah, because when they put it on the market, they put it on the market for this unrealistic value that was never going to get met. And so it's very important that you explain to your clients, this isn't a depressed area. This is an area that got unseasonably hot, and people put their properties on the market speculating that they were going to capitalize on this bubble price, and then they had to get realistic. But unfortunately, what happens is the data gets skewed in a way that makes it look like it's a very depressed area, and people are groping to get any kind of price they can. Case in point, house next to mine. They put it on the market for $4 million, $4.5 million. Now they're down to 2.5 million. That's an appropriate price for that property. 4.5 million was unrealistic. But if you look at the data, you're going to go, oh my God, it's selling for almost half of list, and you're going to freak out.
And that's something as a listing agent, you want to set your expectations. Like I have a listing right now that I have, in near the Flamingo Park, actually just north of El Cid, is, the seller wanted to go for the moon. I said it, but you got to set the expectations. Hey, we can try it, but like we need to manage the market. Here's what's happening. Here's the comps. Here's the trends. You got to.
Here's the per foot price of what's actually selling.
Exactly. As
Here's the
long as they
per
know
foot.
that and you say, hey, you got this number, but like, you suggested at the end of the day, they're going to pick their number, right, Jim? But, you do your best you can to set expectations and say, if we don't sell, then this is a plan that we got to do to get this thing sold. So that's one. Now, this is a big one here is the sales volume. So this is month over month, the number of condo sales in hundreds of millions. And obviously you're seeing a downward trend with this too, which was kind of crazy that, the January to February is downward trend and it's even expecting more. So this is actually the total sold sales volume for condos in Palm Beach County. Okay.
Wow.
So, some very interesting numbers right there. If we do want to look real quick, where I went out to 2 years just to see more of the trends here on the market data. So I went out 2 years because I can only go out 2 years from the data from February 2023, February 2025. You can see the days on the market, even back 2 years ago, was 35 days. We're at 80 days now. And this is a big thing too, looking back. I mean, look, we were at only 2 months of inventory back in March of 2023, and look where we're at now.
So there's the dates. So we were at 2 months. Okay, so you said 2 months of inventory. The number on the left is a 6.
Right here. No, I mean, we got down to a little over, I guess.
Okay, I
a month.
gotcha. That's 6 months. Those are months. So
yeah, those are months for each
now
month.
we have what? We have over a year of inventory on the market?
Yep. We do for condos in Palm Beach County, Jim. We shifted basically from very quickly here, in
God.
October, we literally went from a buyer's market, or I guess an average market, which, to right up to here to a buyer's market.
You guys, this is just further exemplifying. This is like a market shock that isn't reconciled or justified by the data, right? So everybody's pulling back from condos, yet there are some wonderful condo opportunities. Prices might have to be adjusted, expectations might have to be set, but the reality is not every condo looks like the media is portraying.
Yeah. And honestly, if I'm a buyer's agent, like, why wouldn't you share this data with the listing agent if you're trying to get a lower price, and say, hey, here's the data. I mean, this is, our number that we're coming in at isn't too crazy off. And as you're working on your listing, you're going over this. It's like a wave. It's literally, I think the surfing analogy is one of the best ways to present this to your seller. Like, you got to surf this wave. You got to get out in front of it. Because if you don't, you're just going to be
if you
chasing.
think you're going to time this thing
Yeah.
and wait till you hit the bottom, Now you're going to be fighting with the crowd to either sell or you're going to be fighting with the crowd to either buy. You have to be ahead of the wave. You
You
have
have
to
to.
understand the data, and you can't expect, if you're a buyer, oh, I'm gonna wait a little longer and time the bottom. It doesn't work out that way.
No.
Everybody says, oh, I wish I had bought 6 months earlier. If you're a buyer, now is the time.
Now is the time. It really is. And then number of listings, you can see here, number of listings sold. So this is number of listings sold, Jim, just so you know. Look at this trend, from 2 years ago now going back. I mean, look at
Wow.
March of 2023, we were selling almost, over 1,000 condos a month to now we're at below 500.
I don't even want to see the data for 2022, but thank you.
It only brought me back. It only lets me go back 2 years. I couldn't go back
I'm
further.
glad you can't see it.
I know. So, I mean, this is all information's power. This is all good. These graphs and this data that I'm showing you just helps you win listings, right? I mean, it's going to help you win listings. You're going to be educated. You're going to hopefully price those condos right so you can actually sell them and make money. And if you're working with your buyers, now those ones, I mean, I've had a lot of buyers, Jim, that have been sitting on the fence, especially people from Canada that I've been working with in Northeast. They want to get an affordable condo last couple of years, have had them on my drip campaigns. Now's the time. Like, now's the time to buy. You know what I
But
mean?
Ryan, it's really important too, and we're scientists, right? We're in the lab every day. We're looking at the data. We're sophisticated. It's really important to break this stuff down
Mm-hmm.
to manageable bite-sized pieces for your clients. They're not sophisticated.
Yep.
It'd be nice if there was like a summary of the data that we could give to clients that was just bullet points, because if you drop this in their lap, they're going to get overwhelmed. So,
Yeah, no, I mean, we're going to share this, obviously. I mean,
yeah.
you could do a Zoom over this and take 10 minutes, 15 minutes to go over them. They don't need to absorb the whole thing. You don't have to email it to them, but presenting it in the right way, it's going to get people to buy. Like, I'm literally doing that with three, I'm working with 3 buyers in the courtyards right now, Jim, that I'm going over this with. So that was Palm Beach County. This is Broward County. Um,
Is Broward worse?
No, Broward actually, well, there's some things in Broward that are different. So total active last year to this year. So the actives actually went down for condos. The new listings from last year to this year went down, but look at the number of sales, that under contract number of sales. The number of sales is way down. So looks like the
There's
inventory.
less listed and less sold.
Exactly. And look at that difference on the sold volume too.
I wonder why that is.
I don't know, but that's Broward.
When we start talking about dollar volumes of sales, it can be misleading,
Yeah.
right? Like Ryan was saying, you get a couple of outliers, it drags the numbers away. And then when you start talking about total sales volume, I don't know that those are great numbers to
I
share
wouldn't,
with
I wouldn't go on this. I would go on the number of listings and
Yeah, I
the
would go
number of
on
sold.
units versus dollars.
Exactly. I would too. And then I broke this too, just so you know, days on the market here. Look at this. We went from 50.
That's a great one.
This is a good one. This is a good one. The months of inventory as well for Broward. Look at this. We were down to 7 months of inventory to now to almost 16, 17 months of inventory. So we're pushing 2 years of inventory for condos in Broward
That's
County,
just
Jim. Incredible.
unbelievable.
Number of listings sold. I don't want to say this is active. This is actually number of sold. Look, we went from 1,100 to down now. We're below 400 right now. Price trends, I wouldn't look at this too much. And same with the sale to list price. I wouldn't pay a whole
Yeah, that
bunch.
listing data is, like I said, it
Yeah,
gets
I
so
included it.
misleading.
It's good to show it maybe, but you don't have to spend a lot of time on it. The sales volume though,
No, I'm not trying to sound critical of you. I'm just saying when you talk about
yeah,
listing data, the dollar value data with your buyers and sellers, it can be really misleading because the people had such unrealistic expectations of what they listed.
yeah. But this sold volume, like the number of actual sales of in hundreds of millions per month, I mean, the sales are going down as far as volume too. So that let's look a real quick now at Miami-Dade County, because this is something that's really incredible to me, So the listings are way up in Miami-Dade. Last year there was 13,000. Remember, this is from January to March compared to January to March of this year to last year. So the listings are way up, the number of listings. the new listings are about the same, but the number of under contract has gone considerably down. And look at the number of sold has gone way down. Yeah,
That under contract, wow.
I know. And check this out, days on the market. Again, this is going, we were down below 60 to now we're over 80. This is a big one to look at right here. Look at this. We're now over 20 months supply of condos in Miami-Dade County, Jim.
There's 2 years of inventory
What do you
almost.
mean? Not even a year ago, we were at, about 9 months, and now we are over 20 months of inventory of condos. And I want to let you know, this is just the MLS. I'm getting this data from the MLS. This ain't taking into consideration the new construction condos. So there you go. That aren't on the MLS. Some of these developers, remember, they don't all put their condos on the MLS. So
Brent just chimed in. The amount of new condo data would be interesting too. Yeah.
I know. This is just resales, guys, just so you know of what's happening, price trends, and then
I'm never going to tell you that selling real estate was easy. And it's the most underestimated profession. To get good at it, it's not like selling sunset. But the condo thing has introduced another level of complexity.
I mean, look at this. They were doing almost $1 billion a month in condos, in April of last year, to now we're at 500 million. So pretty much of half
Yeah.
of what it was. So, guys, I know it's a scary data, but this is when people buy. This is when the smart money buys. So if you're working with buyers and you're showing this data, I know they're scared. They're like going to try to catch a falling knife. But as Jim mentioned, you can't time it. As people look at this data and then all of a sudden the investors start moving in, guess what happens? It hits the bottom quick, and then it just starts going up. So,
well, your graphs are really good because it shows how quickly things turn. And that's part of the narrative of like, you'll never time this thing. And if you wait too long, now you've lost out.
Yeah. So a lot of knowledge dropped on all of us today, Jim. And now you can use those reports to your advantage. Like, you're now the educated agent. You know how to read the reports. You know what to look for your buyers. Number two, you look for your sellers. You're reading those reports. You see that the condo's not a mess, that they have an active plan to sell. The prices are going down. You're getting your buyers the right price. You're listing the condos, getting them to list at the right price so they sell. And now you're making money.
And I would suggest that if you don't use it, use Google Docs, and you start setting up little folders for each building. And you create a little cheat sheet of the discussion for each building. And so when you're in the field and you're talking to somebody, or you're on your phone, you're talking to somebody, a buyer or a seller, you can go to your Google Docs on your phone. You can click on the folder for that building. You can have your little narrative already typed out in a little summary. And now, boom, how knowledgeable do you look, instead of one of these agents, oh, I got to find it out, or, whatever it is. Knowledge is going to be the power that distinguishes you and creates your market. Is it going to happen overnight? It's never going to happen overnight. I spent hours trying to figure out what's going on in 2 buildings. But that's the way you're going to distinguish yourself. Would I advise somebody to buy in those 2 buildings downtown? Absolutely. Why? Because you know exactly what the future looks like. Why won't people buy? Because they don't know what the future looks like. That's the only reason people don't buy.
Yep. There's some good deals right now in the courtyards.
Yeah, and the deals get factored, and the assessments get factored into the purchase price. And the algorithms don't reflect it. Keep that in the back of your mind. All your buyers and sellers are looking at the Zillow and Realtor.com. Rocket Mortgage just bought Redfin. Does everybody know about this? Rocket Mortgage just bought Redfin, and they now Rocket Mortgage is 13% now in the web traffic category of apps, of real estate apps. They went from number 1% to 13% overnight. None of these people know that. None of these apps know that story. That's my point.
Yeah. And I will say this, now that obviously Redfin's a brokerage, right? I mean, it's even more of a reason not to use Rocket Mortgages, because think about in the future, if you're an agent referring them to Rocket Mortgage, and they now own a brokerage, who do you think they're going to hit up now when they want to go, when your buyers want to sell, so they're going to push
They're gonna
The Redfin
absolutely
brokerage.
lever the data that they gather, get it writing mortgages when the people go to sell. Absolutely. And,
Yeah.
and Ryan, that's a really good point. Is Redfin was this revolutionary model that was going to be a disruptor. Over time, Redfin has merged into and changed into a more classic brokerage model. It's just the classic brokerage model works. So
Yeah.
that's solace for you guys and the apps.
Awesome. Well, I want you to check out RealTrade, guys. Realtrade.io. You can just Google RealTrade. It's free to sign up. You can get free leads from your listings. You can connect with awesome service providers like Jim on the platform, like Jeff that's on this call. If you need a good lender, you need a good title company, you need a good inspector, appraiser, contractor, all those people are there. And of course, you can connect with other agents and help sell properties quicker. This has been pretty amazing, Jim. I mean, I don't know of any other webinars that are going this kind of granular and giving this type of information to help us agents sell condos right now. And it's a huge opportunity, educated agent with the condos right now to make deals happen.
I hear you. Are you guys, can you see the RealTrade screen, Ryan?
I see the outline.
All right. Well, I got the wrong screen share up. I meant to pull up the RealTrade images. Anyways, yeah, RealTrade is the best shortcut to the double dip. Get yourself out there. Don't empower the big platforms that are just taking your data to use it against you. The fact that people are paying to be on a platform for their listings that they work so hard to get, it just blows my mind. Use lever RealTrade, lever title advance. Knowledge is key. You don't always hear what you want to hear. Lever title advance. And if you need to get a hold of me, go to newpathtitle.com and click on 24/7 attorney support. Everything I learned from you guys, I bring to this forum, and iron sharpens iron every week. It works. All right, you
Hey,
guys.
thanks everybody. Get out there. Happy selling. Good luck.